Hello, Will Bushy here from Code Bootcamp. I've been working on our summer curriculum for our 5-day gaming boot camp that we host in the summer. Last year we did a Super Mario Brothers like game. This year I want to change that up, do completely different games so that we can have those kids that joined us last year also participate. But I also kind of wanted a different game altogether, and I've been thinking a lot about doing a game that's got kind of more dimensions, kind of up and downs rather than just left and right as part of the platform game. So I thought so I've been working on that over the last couple of days. I thought I'd just shoot a video, give you a little bit of insight as to what goes into building a game. So this here is a program called Inkscape. It's a free program, open source. It's great. Love it. I'm going to show you a little bit of how I use that at the end of this video as well. But I thought I would just jump right in and show you how I created this particular game. So now keep in mind, Inkscape is a vector drawing tool. It is not a game creation tool. All of this will get converted into something that we can use within Construct 2. So like most programs like Inkscape, it does support this ability to create multiple layers. And so I've created a bunch of different layers, and I'm going to walk you through each of those as we go. So I'm going to roll all the way back. This is the final game. I'm going to roll all the way back to the beginning of where I started and just give you a quick walkthrough of what the process that I go through is and how I go about creating these games. So the first thing I do is I create what I call a rough layout of the game. In my mind, I have a general idea of how I want the game to work and the types of things that I want in it. Usually I will pick my background and characters and theme in advance. This year I'm using this tile sheet, and a tile sheet is, or tile set, is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's a set of images that are on a tile, and these are the things that get created as part of the background, and also some of the artifacts. Now I'm not using the tile sheet system here as part of Construct 2. I think it's just too hard for kids to use, so instead I create a large image that they import, and then we go ahead and just build the grounds around them. And it's just so much easier, and it just cuts down on so much tedious laying out every single pixel, which you'll see here in a minute what I go through to do that. So anyway, this is my rough idea. So I knew I wanted a game that kind of went left to right and then up and down a little bit with a couple different levels. Now you'll see I've got this blue grid. Now each of these tiles on this tile sheet are 64 by 64, which is a good size for laying things out. And my player is also within a 64 by 64 grid. So the first thing I need to do is kind of get those proportions just right. And so you just kind of have to mess around with that. Each of these grids represents exactly one of those tiles. So I can zoom out as I've got here, get an idea of the lay of the land, and then start laying things out so they match. Now this here at the very bottom, you'll see, and this is my rough, so when I do the rough, I don't use the grid a whole lot. I just kind of organize things generally. You see I don't line things up. I don't mess around with those things either when I'm laying it out. I just want a general start to finish workflow. So you see my character, this is the blue one. This is about the size of my character. I mean, the character in the end was a little bit bigger than this, but this just gives me an idea. So proportion wise, you know, is this a character that can jump this high? Perfect. Can he fall through? Excellent. That way I know that the game is kind of generally going to be playable. So I use different colors to just represent different things, and I don't always know what those things are at the beginning. Sometimes I just know, like here, I know there's a block I want him to jump on. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what tiles I'm going to use. This is my ground. This will be something that he runs across. This was just meant to represent some kind of a hazard. In the end it was spikes, but I mean it could have just as easily been a lava pit or a hole. So once I kind of get an initial idea, I start to lay these out, and I kind of organize them the way I'm thinking in my head. You know, we go up and over. These are going to be some enemies, and I put some notes in here. Jump on these, so the player knows that they're going to jump on them. These notes will actually appear in the final game just to give feedback to the player so they know what they're doing. So you can see this is yellow. This is those blocks that we're jumping on, and I know I want another pillar of some sort right here. I don't know what it is just yet when I'm laying them out. So I want him to come up and over. I want some rewards, some things for him to collect. They're represented with this star. So I know I want him to collect those, so I put a couple of those on the screen, and we've got another enemy here. Then I know we're going to get to this point. He's going to climb up on something, and he's going to make some type of a leap of fate because he can't see over the edge. And there's going to be a little spring pad here that's going to jerk him up. And then he's going to fly up in the air, and then he's going to have to land on this. And if he misses, he's going to fall back down here, and he'll have to do it again. So then he's going to go across these platforms, jump over here, and you'll see, and I don't always keep my colors consistent, but this one I have it pretty consistent. So then we've got another enemy and another enemy he'll have to fight, and then I got some kind of a platform here for him to climb up. I don't have any rewards or anything up on top of it, but he can get up here, jump back down on this other enemy. And then I've got him kind of jumping on these panels, and these blue objects over here, I can't quite decide if they're going to be moving, if they're going to be back and forth or up and down, or if they're just jump through. And the jump through is like where you jump up and you jump through the object, and then on the way back down you land on it. So he'll jump up, jump up, jump up, and then exit. So again, not sure at this level exactly how those will look or what they'll be, but then it'll take them to the door, which will get them to the next level. I'm planning for at least 3 levels for this game that we're going to do this summer. So anyway, this is level 1. You can zoom out. That's the nice thing about laying this out in advance. I can zoom out, I can get a look at it, and I can say, oh, does this look like it's playable? Is this progressively getting more difficult as you start off? Like, can you jump on these blocks? Can you kill these enemies? Can you climb over things? Are you able to balance on these pieces? Obviously, if you get to here and you fall, there's a chance you could fall and land on the spikes, or you probably won't. You'll probably land on one of these blocks. But I did kind of organize that on purpose. Now that would mean you have to start over and do the game again, but at least you wouldn't die. So this allows you to kind of play around with that look and feel and see what you like. Now with these layers, I'm able to then layer things on top of them, and those layers work exactly like it sounds, just like sheets of paper, one on top of the other. I can hide one at a time and lock it so I don't accidentally move things. So now let me move on and show you what I did on the main layer. So the main layer is where I put all of my ground, and I have all of my kind of these panels here that he's jumping on, these little blocks. And this will actually be part of the final game. So let me just overlay that so you can see where I had my rough out, my template. And now I actually went in and I created the ground. And you can see this is only the ground. If we scroll all the way over here, you can see all the pieces are just the ground. Now if I zoom in, you'll see these blocks, and this is why I use a tool like Inkscape. And I've got, these blocks are all 64 by 64, and this grid is 64 by 64. So things snap in really, really nicely. I don't have to worry about getting things lined up just perfect. So what I end up doing, and you'll see below the screen here, and you'll see I have all kinds of artifacts. But I'll have copies of the ground, and I'll have copies of the things that I'm going to be working on. And I move these around a lot just because I don't want to scroll to the bottom every single time. But it's just a template. And if I wanted to, put another, if I want to put another object up here, I can do a copy paste, go like this really quick, and create them. And then if I wanted to trim that out on each end, I got one too many in here, I can do that, and they'll snap in nicely. So you can see how quickly that was. Now these edge ones you'll see hang over just a little bit. Those blocks are actually a little bit larger than 64 by 64, so you can tweak them so they're perfect, but it doesn't really matter if they're overlapping a little bit. You can see the design doesn't change a whole lot. Nobody would notice the difference between those. But this just allows me to test things real quick. Now you'll notice my player, I need to make sure he can actually navigate, and so this is about the same size as my player in the end, and I'll show you him in a minute. But that I actually can drag around a little bit as I'm building the game and make sure the player can get around. So let's go ahead and delete those. That's how the ground gets laid out. And like I said, if I'm working up on the top, I might just copy all of these. I'll just throw them up here, and then I can very easily, boom, 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 lay that out. And then if I need to move things around, I can, and then everything fits in nicely. Now I know based on the size of my player, he can walk under 3 of these blocks, 3 of these 64 by 64 blocks. So as long as I've got room for 3, I know my player can go through, and he'll easily follow through a width of 2. And that's all by design because I need him to be able to fall through. So you'll see as he's going up on these blocks, these are separated by 2 and then 1, and then 2 and 1, and then because he's higher here, he can jump a little bit further. So this isn't a struggle for him to jump 1 up and 2 over. And then when he's over here, he can jump down here and actually goes 2 by 2, and then 3 by 2, or 3. I'm sorry, 3 by 2. To have him move around. So by using that grid and then having your character as well as your blocks within those proportions to each other, just helps a whole lot. So as you can see over here, where I told you on my template I wasn't sure how I wanted that to look, this is what I ended up deciding on. So he's got to kill, he's got to jump on these 2 enemies and then kind of climb this stair step, and then he's going to collect something. I'm not exactly sure what it is yet. When I created the template, it didn't matter. I just knew there was going to be something here. Now the other interesting thing is once he jumps down here, this is kind of a one-way ticket here. Once he gets off this block, he is not able to jump back up over that. So he's kind of trapped down here. So what I may end up doing is putting this enemy over here so he doesn't know it's coming, and then all of a sudden he's surprised and he's got to defeat it, or something like that. But anyway, once he jumps down, he's not going to go back that direction. He's only going to go forward. Collect another prize, and then he's got this little jump here. He'll jump off. This, like I said, will be a leap of faith because he doesn't know there's a springboard down here, but the text will show up on the screen that says jump on these, implying there's something down there. And then that'll shoot him up here, and if he misses, he'll fall back down. Hopefully he doesn't land on the spikes, but the plan is to have him land here. Now as I'm laying these out, and I tweaked that template a little bit as well, you don't know for sure if he's got enough strength to jump on top. So you may need to come back and move a few of these things around, which is no big deal. That's why we're laying it out in advance. So once he gets up here, you can see I created using the pink jump through. So as he comes here, he'll jump through and land, jump through and land, jump through and land. I might put a reward up here too. I'm not 100% sure. And then he's got to get past this last enemy, and don't fall. This will be a message that shows on the screen because obviously if you fall, you got to come all the way back at the beginning and start over. And then ultimately get up here and exit the door. Now I don't have a door in my final game yet because I haven't quite found the door I like that goes with this design. But anyway, that's how I laid out the blocks. It still doesn't look much like a game, but as you add more layers, you'll see that it does. So the next layer I have, and I'll cover these layers real quick. Background is exactly what it sounds. It's the background. The rough layer is the layer we saw originally, the template. This main layer, this is where I have all of the ground and the main bulk of the program that the player will interact with. My extras are things that are what I call the scenery. It's in this particular game I've got some fences and some trees and some flowers. It's those extra things. And I like to just kind of keep those separate. I can hide them, unhide them as I'm designing and laying out the screen. And then the topmost layer, this will actually be the last layer that I work on, is where those enemies go. And I'll explain why I've separated them out like this here in a few minutes when I start talking about how I go from here to construct to. So anyway, let's take a look at this extras layer. So I'm going to show that. So you'll see here, if we zoom back in, it adds some details like a tree and some fences. This sheet had these were the artifacts, and I grabbed a few from another one as well for a couple pieces. But it had these signs that said, warning and question mark and direction. I thought those were kind of neat, so I added one right here before the spikes indicating, don't go this way. You probably need to go a different way, and I did that on both sides. And then just adding some little touches like a flower here behind the fence. I don't know, the enemy may or may not be hidden behind that fence. It'll kind of depend on how I get that final layout. And then like I mentioned earlier, when you kind of jump down here and you can't go back, I wanted to have an arrow indicating, hey, you're going on the right direction, keep going this way. And then I've got this question mark just kind of indicating, hey, you're going to have to jump. Just thought it added a little bit of mystery to it. And then up top here, I added another tree and a few other things. Like I said, I put a question mark here. I may end up putting a reward of some sort up top here. So if I zoom all the way out, you can kind of get an idea, and you can see it's starting to take shape, as part of it. Now let me hide this rough. So there we go, we get rid of the rough. It kind of makes things look a little funky with it. So this is now looking not too bad. I can get an idea. In my head, I can see how the player will go through and how the user will go from the beginning to the end. So now let's take a look at this last layer. This last layer is the enemy, and I keep everything having to do with sprites in the final game, like the enemy and the player, and if there's anything else, you'll see like my springboard. Those all go on this block because when I export these images, I don't want them on the final game. So I'll show that. So now you can see here's my character. He's a little boy in a bunny outfit, and he's going to move around the game, and there's a bunch of different sprite sheets for him. Hopping and jumping and so on. So we'll use those as part of the final game. And now you can see I've added in a couple of my enemies. Again, not 100% sure if these guys are going to go up and down like a sine wave or just left and right. Unsure exactly what it's going to be. And so these will be the enemies, and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to function in the final game. And then you'll see here I've got the rewards, which I've just got a gem that's up here that they'll collect. And then as I go over here, you can see I added some additional enemies and coins or gems for him to collect. And I have this springboard in here too, so he can jump and get to that second level. So all of those are on the final layout, this enemy layout. So I'll just scroll through here, all of them. Now, note these guys are all facing the same way, but this is just for the template layout. Those will all be dynamic in the final game. And I haven't quite figured out what I want for doors, so that there is no doors anywhere. So I'll zoom out and you can kind of see. Now this looks pretty good, but it just doesn't look like it's a final game. It's interesting how much a background makes a difference on a game. Now I've got the background on a completely different layer. And the reason the background's on its own layer is sometimes, depending on the game that I'm doing, that background will actually be a separate layer in the game, and it'll have the parallax a little bit different. So when the character's moving across the screen, the background moves at a different rate to give you that effect like in the real world, where stuff in the distance moves slower than stuff in the foreground. Which is also why I have a lot of these extras on their own layer. Now this one, these won't be on their own layer in the final game, but I could do that on some of the other games. So now let me just go ahead and show this background, and you'll see what a difference it makes. So now it's got some real depth to it. You can see the kind of got the rolling clouds here in the background, got either a sun or a moon. Now I did tweak this image a little bit. The contrast wasn't quite what I wanted. So I went ahead and edited that, added a little bit more darkness to it because my character is so white. If it was any lighter than this, he kind of faded into the background, in which we didn't want. But now you can kind of see this is what the final game is going to look like. Now this character here, you can see he just kind of fits in here, and he can fall down. Now one of the things that I'll do is his ears are kind of sticking up here in this image, but in the final game, I won't have his ears be part of those collision points. So he'll actually be quite a bit smaller when he can fit through these things, through these areas, and he'll be able to fall down. So that's what I've done for level 1. I'll just zoom all the way out here again. You can take one final look at it. Now you will need to tweak these, and I had to tweak this. This is the final version, so you didn't see some of the areas. So I had a couple of these too tight, and the player wouldn't fall down, so he'd essentially never be able to fall off this top edge. So I had to tweak a few of those things, and then I just went back and adjusted the template. Now, the way I use this is I actually export a couple of different images. So for example, I'll just simply hide, well, I'll keep the background, but I'll hide the enemies, and I'll export this image, and this will be my template. And then in Construct 2, I'll actually use this as a guide for where the background and the characters kind of meet here for ground and these blocks that he jumps on and so on. And then I'll also separately export one that includes the enemies. And I'll use this as a template so the kids know about where to place each of their enemies. Now, they don't have to place them there, but it's just a good guideline for them. So anyway, that's how I went about creating this first level. And I've got a couple other levels. I may shoot another video to show you those levels as well. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm looking forward to this summer. If your kids are interested in learning how to build this game, just have them sign up on our website, sdgamingbootcamp.com. We'll run a number of those events here in Sioux Falls as well as around the state. So they always fill up. Go ahead and jump on board early and get signed up, and that way you won't miss out. So that's all I've got. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.